All right, and welcome everyone to yet another USPTA powered session of the USTA Eastern Conference. I'm Jason Spears, USPTA Eastern President, and today we have with us Jeff Salzenstein presenting Solving the 5 Critical Serve Mistakes Players Make. Jeff is a USPTA Elite Professional, USTA High Performance Coach, a Certified Extreme Focus Performance Coach, and the founder of Tennis Evolution. During his time as a touring pro, he had 2 major surgeries that forced him to really evaluate how he's maximizing his serve. Through Tennis Evolution, he's helped thousands of people online with their serve using his simplistic serving technique. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to write them in the chat box. I give you Jeff Salzenstein.
Jason, thank you so much. And this is an absolute honor to be presenting today to the USTA Eastern section and with all of you. So thanks for having me. I have to say this Zoom format has a lot of positives, but also some challenges because I really vibe off of the crowd when I present. So it's a bit strange to do it without seeing any feedback. But I'm really excited to be a part of this event. And my goal today is to help you all solve the 5 critical serve mistakes players make. And I always start out every presentation by saying, I don't know all the answers. I'm just sharing my experience, what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. And hopefully you'll have some great takeaways at the end of this hour. And it might even validate some things that you're already doing that are working. So with that being said, let's get started. We're going to get through this presentation. I'm going to get the slides going. Okay, so here's what we're going to go through here. You might be wondering, why the heck is there a karate belt order as the first slide? Because the karate belt order is related to learning Chinese and filet mignons. All right, so that's my pattern interrupt to get you to wake up and say, what's this guy going to be talking about? Okay, so karate belt order, learning Chinese, and filet mignons. What do they all have in common? And what we're also going to talk about today is something that I call the 3 Ps: patterns, positions, and progressions. So throughout this presentation, you are probably going to hear me referring to those 3 Ps at different times. And this is how I've based my entire system to help people learn how to serve, because we all know it's one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging stroke in tennis to teach and to actually execute. So it's about the 3 Ps: patterns, positions, and progressions. So real quick, I'm going to breeze through a little bit of my background just to give you some more context. Okay, who am I? Jeff Salzenstein, the founder of Tennis Evolution. The picture on the left, I won the nationals at age 12. But by the time I was 15 and a half, I had dropped all the way to 69 in the country. That's me on the right. I'm about 1 inch taller 3.5 years later, and about 15 pounds. I'm about 102 pounds in the picture on the right. I had lost first round at Kalamazoo. So I went from being a national champion to someone who was losing first round at nationals in the 16 under division. So it wasn't all roses for me on this journey. I had the worst serve in college tennis. Even though I got to Stanford my freshman year there, I was still growing, still essentially going through puberty, and I couldn't break 100 miles an hour. My coaches, Coach Gould and John Whitlinger, were having a hard time figuring out how to help me develop my serve. So it was an honor to play for Stanford, but I did have, honestly, one of the worst serves in college tennis that freshman year. So that summer I went home and I studied Goran Ivanisevic. He saved me. I went and I watched Wimbledon on TV that year. I went out and I modeled his service motion, and I grew a little bit and I made some breakthroughs. And lo and behold, within a year, I had one of the best, if not the best serves in college tennis, and was able to win 2 national titles at Stanford. That's me hugging a fraternity brother after our upset win over UCLA back in 1996. And just about a year and a half after that, found myself playing in the main draw doubles at the French Open with Peter Korda. And then on the right there, that image is from a video of me playing Michael Chang at the US Open. So quite a change from the little guy who was 16 to the guy who had a weak serve his freshman year in college to someone who was playing on the big stage. And my journey with the serve did not stop there. I met John Yandel, who presented on Tuesday for this event, and he taught me the power of video. We sat down and we studied videos of the pros, and at the time it was Pete Sampras. And he showed me how I should start to model Pete Sampras, and he helped me understand the dynamics of that. I ended up winning the Aptos Challenger, where that previous picture was taken with John, and I ended up qualifying at the US Open at the age of 29 that year because of the improvements that I made in my serve. And I also was able to play at the main draw at Wimbledon at the age of 30 the next year. And that was a great memory of mine, even though I did lose first round. So transition into coaching. I'm 33 years old. I moved back to Denver, Colorado, and I've got my guinea pigs. I started working with high performance juniors in Denver and all ages 6 all the way up to 18, also working with adults as well. This is one of my students from about a decade ago. And one of the challenges that I had was I had this big serve and I felt confident teaching footwork and technique, but I actually was getting hangups with the serve. I couldn't figure out all the progressions and how to really teach it. So I went on a mission. I started every lesson. I started using my phone to record videos, to slow it down. And I started noticing patterns. And many of you have probably noticed patterns over the years that we're going to cover today. And I started noticing patterns, and I was trying to figure out a way, how could I get players to morph their serve into something that looked more like the pros? So all ages, all sizes, different serves and different backgrounds. And I studied and I started piecing this all together. And so in this presentation, I might sound like a broken record because I'll be saying a lot of the same things over and over again. I'll be talking about a lot of the same drills. And that's what I love about what I've kind of developed with this framework, is that a lot of the problems that we're going to diagnose in this presentation that you've seen on the court, there are some simple corrections. It may take time. It may take a lot of work for your students, but there are some simple progressions and drills that can help. And I see it time and time again, the same patterns that can be solved with specific progressions. All right, so we got through that introduction, and we need to first talk about the tale of two serves. So what do I mean by the tale of two serves? The picture on the left is me serving with a forehand grip, and I'm just getting the serve in. The picture on the right is that picturesque Roger Federer trophy position. And the way that I would want my students to think about their serve is that you have two serves. You have the one that you compete with, the one that you go out tomorrow and you're going to do the best you can with it, even if it's a pancake forehand grip, even if it doesn't look like the pros, even if there's a lot of inefficiencies. That's your serve today. And then you have your future self or your future serve. That's the one you want to be moving towards. And so I always like to say that, because I am not so fixated on technique that you have to use specific techniques tomorrow and think about all these technical thoughts and then go out and compete with that new serve. It's very difficult to do. So the tale of two serves: use the serve you have today to compete, get your 5-year-olds, your 8-year-olds loving the game of tennis and getting the ball in and learning it. And then you'll find the students that really want to take it to that next level. And if you have a system, if you have a framework, you can start to systematically help them improve over time. So mistake number one, it's an obvious one, right? The grip. I would say, I don't know if there's been any data collected, but if I were to go to all the clubs around the world and I looked at club players and junior players, not high performance, obviously, but your everyday club player, I'd say 80% of players have a forehand grip or an inefficient grip. And it's not just about having a forehand grip or a continental grip. I want to dig into the details. So a couple of details that I've noticed on the court, working with players over the years and with all the video reviews that I've done over the years, is something I call the block grip. And so what this means is that the fingers are really squished together. All right. It's really important to have that index finger spread, which I'm going to show you an image in a moment. But you'll see players hold the racket like this with that death grip, with the fingers clenched together. So we will obviously want to look for that. We also have the problem of the high hand. That simply means that when in the racket drop position, the hand is above the elbow. And if you have a forehand grip, that's pretty much the way you have to serve. So your grip is going to impact your racket drop, of course. Another problem that I see, fingers opening up mid-swing. So you'll see someone with that continental grip, they toss the ball, and when they get up towards their trophy position or their racket drop, you'll see the fingers. Well, you might not see it, but if you look carefully in video, you'll notice they re-grip the racket. They open their fingers and they switch to that forehand grip. So they're cheating, and we can't have them cheating with the grip. This brings me to my next big point, and I call it the linear swing path. If you have a forehand grip, you are going to be swinging in a forward straight line towards your target line. And in order to learn how to serve like the pros and have a beautiful topspin serve that may morph into a kick serve, you want the swing path to be more what I call circular. And so the picture on the right shows, if you notice the body position, look at how I'm more sideways, look at where the ball position is. Again, this is an excessive toss for, a kick serve. So it's not where you're going to put the toss for a first serve, but there's a big difference between these two, and it's related to the grip. So the grip is number one. You've got to be very diligent about finding the players that want to make those changes and not letting them get away with that linear swing path when they're working on their serve. So of course, the solution, the solution, the continental grip. And as I alluded to earlier, you want to have this hand, what I call angled, and make sure that trigger finger is showing up on the hand, look on the grip, looking like that. You don't want to block grip. Another little point that I noticed over the years is that this thumb here is fastened over the middle finger. So if someone has a block grip, they're going to be fastening or securing their hand. The index finger and the thumb are going to be overlapping like this. But if you spread the trigger finger, you'll see it overlap on the middle finger. So just a little detail to notice. I also like to have the heel of the hand off of the racket. You'll see a lot of people, choked up. Again, a lot of these things you may already see, you may already know. My job today is to maybe point out a few things that are a little bit different. And so, okay, so one thing I suggest, you can get a grip trainer. I believe On Court, Off Court has a grip trainer where you secure this little knob and it doesn't let the grip move, okay? Now, learning Chinese, okay? So we're talking about learning Chinese. I mentioned the karate belt system before. This whole idea around the karate belt system is that you have to learn the grip first. You have to be a white belt first. You can't skip steps and go all the way to try to be a brown belt or a black belt. So how does that relate to learning Chinese? Well, if you have a linear swing path and you want to learn the circular swing path and learn how to hit a topspin serve, you're essentially learning a new language. And so if you know you're going to go live in China someday or spend a year there, it's going to help you if you learn the right language. And so we want to be diligent, hopefully with our younger players, to get them to learn this correct swing path and understand this new language, if you will. And I picked Chinese because the serve is so difficult to learn. I'm not here to say this is easy, but there are ways to learn it. There is a system. And so you want to make sure that whatever country you're going into, you need to learn that language and you need to learn that swing path, the one that's more difficult, the one that we want to teach folks so that they can get more enjoyment out of the game long term. And again, it all depends on the player. Some players, they don't want to learn Chinese. They want to just stay with their simple linear swing path, their simple language, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you want to find the players that want to learn the language of the serve. And so that is the circular swing path. Again, I mentioned a little bit before, I want you to notice the ball position is more to the left. It doesn't have to be this extreme, but I did this to really show the differences. I want you to notice the shoulders, how the body is more sideways. If you were to look at Pete Sampras or Roger Federer, you would see more of this. If you're going to look at more of your club player, you're going to see the shoulders facing the net. So that's a big solution, or a big connection between the grip and the swing path. So if you have someone that's struggling with their swing path, look at their grip. If you have someone that's struggling with their grip, look at the swing path. They're intertwined, they're interrelated. And so there is a swing path progression. And the circular swing path progression, I put 5 images on here. And if you were to take your students and start to model or start to find these positions where the racket and the body looks more like what I'm doing, then you know you're on the right track. And again, this is where you can't skip the steps. You've got to follow that belt method where you say, okay, this is white belt. Did I get my racket in this position? Did I get to a trophy position that looks like this? Does my racket drop? Oh, it doesn't look like this? Okay, we need to go back in time here and we need to piece this together. And again, there are different ways to do it with drills and with improving how the body works and improving the technique. We want to look for that racket drop. A lot of people can't open up their body or even get to this position. Again, we're going to talk about how this relates to the body, but you want to look for that racket drop. No longer is the hand above the elbow. It's below the hand is, no longer is the hand above the elbow. It's now below the elbow. And that's a function of the right grip and the right swing path. Now, one of my solutions is something I call the dirty diaper. Not the best name in the world, but it was created by a 9-year-old that I was working with over a decade ago. He said it was like this technique I was giving him was like holding a stinky, dirty diaper. You may have seen one of these videos on YouTube before, but essentially, this is the dirty diaper. Holding the finish in this position, you'll notice that the elbow is bent. You'll notice that the strings are facing towards me. There is, by the way, there is rotation of the shoulder and pronation up at contact, but at the very end, I'm actually bringing the strings towards me. And so I like to have people finish in this position, provided they have no pain, to learn the proper swing path. Because if you finish on the right side of the body, now the swing path can go more left to right instead of forward. And so that's one suggestion that I have for players. Here's a case study of a lady in her late 40s. This is her forehand grip. We put her in this continental grip, and she was working on her dirty diaper and working on her her circular swing path. I also like to have players do what are called fence drills. So I'm choked up here. I'm hitting the ball over the fence. I'm trying to pop the ball over the fence, learning to hit up instead of learning to hit forward. And then this is another image of me just serving into the back fence, because think of it this way. If you want to change a pattern and if you want to improve someone's technique, if you also have the ego involved of getting the serve in the box, there's competition between getting the ball in and serving with the right technique. So I really like to have players put all of their attention on the progression or the position that we're working on to make sure that they learn this new motor pattern. It's very important to have training time dedicated to not hitting the ball over the net into the box. Okay, on to mistake number 2, the start. So with the start, there's a lot to this. Not only is it how you start, not only is it how you start, but it's how you move the racket at the beginning. And so the image on the left, you can see my racket position and my arm position. I want you to notice that. We're going to talk about that in a moment. The image on the right, you can notice my racket is up in the air as I'm releasing the ball. And I see a lot of players struggling with their start. And I'm absolutely obsessed with helping people with their start. I believe the grip, the start, and the next mistake that we're going to talk about helps build your foundation. And we're skipping those steps. We're skipping that white belt and that yellow belt, and we're breezing right through it. And we're focusing on the contact point and the toss and the slice and the topspin and the pronation, but we're not getting the elements. We're not getting the foundation down first. So this problem here, this is a student, I did a video review recently of this player on the left, and it's not excessive by any means, but you'll notice how the racket is up high. In this case, with my image, the arm is straight and locked. His arm is bent, which I like, but I feel like the racket is a little bit high. So I feel like we could trim the fat. We could get that motion more efficient by starting in a different way. Another thing is this down up move, or the down together, up together. What I love to do when I'm watching players serve, on the court or online is I look at where the racket is and what the body is doing when the ball is released. That's a key checkpoint. When you look at positions and you talk about the progressions of this, what is the racket doing? What is the body doing? And you can see here, there's no shoulder turn, there's no coil, and the racket is in a pretty high position as the ball is released, down together, up together. I've seen this before, that back scratch move, where a player starts in a half serve position, but they already have their racket down behind them. So this is not going to promote someone learning the proper mechanics. It's going to make it more difficult for a number of reasons. The racket face opens in the first move at the start of the motion. Can't even see this guy's racket here. It's so open. If it were closed, we would see the racket down here. So that's a big issue. The dominant arm leads. Now, you may be looking at this image of this high performance junior and say, wait a minute, his racket looks like it's in a pretty good position, but it's very similar to what I explained earlier. The ball is just coming out of his hand and the racket tip is already above his head. I think that's a big challenge for most players when they start their motion like this. Excuse me. So the next problem, the high straight arm move. Now we're starting to get towards that trophy position, but look at how straight that arm is and look at how high that hand is. Again, that's related to this start, how players are starting their motion, how they're getting moving out of the garage. It's not going in the right direction, and it's hard to compensate when you don't get the initial move down. This is where the filet mignon comes in. I love filet mignons, medium rare, sometimes medium. We trim the fat off of it. There's no fat on that filet. And that's what we have to do with the serve. I see a lot of efficient extra movements in the serve, and I feel like we can help players make it more efficient and trim the fat. And the easiest way that I found to do it is to model guys like Roger Federer or Pete Sampras. Now, of course, there are other players you can model, but I feel like they have the foundation, especially when it comes to the start, that we can look at and say, all right, we want to get it to look maybe a little bit like them. It doesn't have to look completely like them. We're not trying to create clones out here, but it's nice to have a model. Some of you might be saying, well, Jeff, what about the pinpoint serve? You know, Serena Williams and Goran Ivanisevic and these other players, John Isner, they have pinpoint serves. What about that? We'll get to that. But in terms of the start, I like Federer and Sampras and how they start. And so we're going to move to the next slide here with Federer. All right, so look at Federer here, or I should say me trying to model Federer. Notice how the arms are hanging, okay? Now the arms aren't up. The arms are relaxed, the shoulders are down, and the weight is forward on the front foot. I think you should work on getting your players in this position, because if they learn this, then they can learn how to shift their weight properly as they start the motion. Too many players are starting on equal footing, or they have the racket too high and too straight. There's a lot of things going on at the start. So if you just look at someone's serve and how they start, you will be surprised at how much this impacts their entire motion, that starting position before anything happens. So again, let's get back to white belt. Let's go to yellow belt and orange belt. Let's get the start really dialed in, and let's make it fun. Let's make it, hey, let's see if you can look more like Federer right now with how you start. Oops. Sampras start. So the difference here is that all the weight is on the back foot, but you'll notice that my knee is slightly bent, so I'm not totally locked out. You'll also notice my racket is up here, but it's not as high as the player that I was showing before. And my arm is bent and my shoulders are down and I'm more relaxed. I could probably even lower my racket a little bit more there. But the idea is to get into this position where you can make the proper weight transfer when you initiate this first move. So either go all the way forward or all the way back in your starting position, and try to get your arms to be relaxed. And so one of my first favorite drills is called the 4-inch swivel drill, or the first move drill. And remember, I like to look at what's going on when the ball is released. What you can see here is that my racket is down. So there are variations. It can be lower than that. It can be a little higher than that, but we don't want the racket tip in general. We don't want the racket tip up at this height when we're releasing the ball. We want to delay the hand more, and you can work on that by going against a fence, back here or against the net. And as you toss the ball, you want to lead with the tossing hand and you want to delay the dominant arm more. Again, for me, I liked it more in the mid-range. I didn't like to delay it too much like Pete Sampras, but this is a wonderful drill that I have my online students and my students in person work with consistently. Let's get the first move dialed in, because the first move leads towards that trophy position. And if you get that trophy position right, a lot of good things can happen. One of my favorite drills that I give all of my clients is the half serve drill. I believe we get completely messed up with serving by using a full motion. And this is going to get me maybe in some hot water with folks that are questioning this, but I believe that everyone should practice every day with a half serve, the correct half serve. And you'll notice the racket's on the right side of the body. There is no back scratch here. And you'll notice when I release the ball here, I'm turning my shoulders here. So mastering the half serve drill, getting back to that progression, and then starting to move the racket down towards a full motion over time, I believe is a great progression to help people learn how to turn, to help them get in the racket in the right position, to help with their trophy position, to help sync up the knee bend. This is a wonderful drill. And again, it's about progressions, it's about simplifying, and it's about finding those progressions to help you get into strong power positions. So the half serve drill is amazing. Once you get that down, you can graduate to what I call the 3/4 drill. The 3/4 drill essentially is like a 3/4 motion. Now you start with the racket down by the back knee, and as you release the ball, you're allowed to move the racket. But we see so many players moving their arms together and not learning how to coil and turn. And I found that setting the racket in a different position to start the motion makes all the difference in the world. Put the half serve drill and the 3/4 serve in your staple of drills to help folks. Okay, on to mistake number 3. I'm just paying attention to my time here. We're doing great. Okay, mistake number 3, the stance. Now I picked a couple of students here, online students. You can see the stance on the left is what's called a platform stance. Although he actually moves to a pinpoint from this, but it looks, in the image, it looks like a platform. And then the image on the right, this player has moved his back foot up. And by the way, I'm not opposed to a pinpoint stance. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Not opposed to it, but I do believe that players should set themselves in a platform to really learn the proper foundation, getting back to that karate belt method, getting back to trimming the fat, getting back to learning Chinese, learning the right language of the serve. So mistake number 3 is the stance. This is the foundation here. So the back foot position. So if you'll notice here with this player, notice where the back foot is. If I draw a line from the toe of the back foot forward towards the front foot, it's almost in line. It's about in line with the ball of the foot there, but getting close to being in line with the toe of the front foot. And this player right here with a forehand grip, her toe, if you draw a line from the back toe forward to the front foot, it's in line about with the ball of the foot. Now, if you have a forehand grip, this is actually a good stance. You don't want to have an excessive stance if you have a forehand grip. You'll also see that the grip is related to the stance. This player also has a bit of a forehand grip. So it would make sense that they're not able to stagger their back foot. So the back foot turned out. You can see how far out this player is turning his back foot out. Why is he doing that? Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit later in this presentation, but this is not a great power position to push off of with the foot turned out that much. I like it turned out, but not that much. All right, the front foot moves. You probably see this with your students. They toss the ball and they pick up their front foot. There are some players that do that. Marcelo Rios back in the day, who I practiced with once. Marat Safin, who I never practiced with. They both picked up their front foot, and you'll even see Federer do it when he's warming up his serve. But they're doing it to unweight and put the foot down and then push again. These players are generally picking the foot up because they're chasing the toss, or they're not stable, or they don't have great bounce. So you want to watch for that front foot sliding or moving. this idea that I call the bent, straight, bent. And you've probably seen this before, especially with newer players and adult players. But this player is bending her knees, and then as she tosses the ball, she's straightening her legs. So she has the opposite thing going on than what the pros are doing. The back foot slide. So you saw this image earlier. This foot is sliding up to the right of the front foot. So now that's going to impact coil and turn. Although he has pretty good turn with his shoulder here, he's still not going to get a lot of push and a lot of load if he slides the foot up to the side. Again, there are always exceptions. So as I'm presenting today, keep in mind, I am not black and white. Greg Rusedski, one of the biggest servers of all time, if you go Google him or look him up on YouTube, he brought his back foot up to the side and had one of the best serves of all time. Goran Ivanisevic did it, the guy that I modeled. But I don't necessarily think it's great for your club players or for your junior players. I think there's a more efficient way to get them improving. And we're going to keep talking about that as we move through a couple more mistakes here. All right, so more problems with the stance that I see. We're done with the problems. We're on to the solution. Okay, this is the thing that's coming up time and time again, and the light bulb has gone off so much more in the last couple of years. Most players can't load their back leg. I don't know the reason. I don't know if it's because of the mechanics of the serve, inefficiencies in the body, from how we play tennis. It's just an awkward movement, but most players cannot get into their back leg. And you can see as I'm bending my back leg to try to do my best Roger Federer impression, you can see that my knees are over my toes here. You can see that I have very good mobility in my ankle. I can push down into my back leg. Federer can as well. You notice that angle right there. Most players go to the pinpoint stance because they are going to move that back foot. They're going to move that back foot up because they can't load their back leg. So one of the solutions is to narrow the stance. So if you have someone in a pinpoint stance and you want to teach them how to load the back leg, you can actually bring their feet together more like Andy Roddick or how Gail Monfils used to do a couple of years ago. He switched back to a pinpoint, and you can teach them how to load their back leg with a narrow stance. This isn't the final stance per se, but you want to figure out a way to get them not to move their back leg if they're not able to load. Another thing that you can do is actually teach players to take the legs out of it. So many players want to bend their knees and use their legs to serve. I think that players can learn how to turn and coil without bending their knees and learn how to transfer the weight. So the first picture, number 1 here, I'm pretty equal with my weight. As I'm tossing the ball here, most of my weight's on the back foot. And then as I go to hit the ball, I transfer my weight to the front foot. And when I finish, all of my weight is on the front foot. Most players have a hard time getting this skill down. This is, again, going back to orange belt, yellow belt, getting these little drills in place that players, you want to see if they can get wins in this area. It's not about winning tennis matches or getting to the end result. It's about seeing if they can get these micro drills or these micro progressions down over time. So in 30 days, you challenge your students to learn how to take the legs out and learn a proper turn. Straight bent. I mentioned the bent straight bent earlier. This is where you get players to just straighten their legs, keep it as straight as possible at the beginning. And as they toss the ball, they are not allowed to bend their knees until the ball is released. That's the rule. Legs stay straight like a pogo stick. This is someone who's bending early before they toss the ball. Legs have to stay straight. And then as you release the ball, you bend. Slide skip here. Okay, next. This is the broken record part. The half serve drill comes into play. You can really improve your stance if you simplify the upper body. And if you learn how to turn here, all you have to focus on is just bending your knees. That's it. When you start adding the full motion in, a lot of weird stuff starts to happen. Of course, the platform stance. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great to solidify that foundation, get it down, get the coil, get the turn. It's got a mind of its own here. Get the turn. You can actually see here, Djokovic could actually, believe it or not, I think he could improve his serve. He doesn't do as good a job of loading his back leg that Federer does. So if you're a Federer fan, you can one up Djokovic now with the serve. If you're a Djokovic fan, maybe you can reach out to him and say he's got another gear left in his serve that he might not be aware of. But the platform stance, it's stable, it's simple, and most people don't do it because it's not comfortable and they're not able to load that back leg. Now with the pinpoint stance, this is John Isner here, and you can see how he's bringing his back foot up. Okay, he's bringing his back foot up right here, and it's coming up behind his front foot. I like this so much better than bringing up the foot to the side. Checking my time here. Okay, modified pinpoint. You can go to a modified pinpoint where you bring up the back foot, and you can notice how I brought it up, but it's behind the front foot, and it's also not as close. So it's almost like a modified platform, but this is something that you could play around with as well. Let's get to mistake number 4, the trophy position. Now, you might have seen this with your students before. Notice the curve in the low back. We're going to talk about that in a moment. This is a big issue. Players are squatting to get to their trophy position. So we want to be able to see that and understand how we might be able to help our students, because it'll set them up for more success, not only with their technique, but it'll also take more stress off of their body. Problems we see, of course, the open racket face. You will see this if they have a forehand grip. Lacking turn and coil. This is a high-level Division I player. She doesn't have a lot of turn or coil here. You'll notice the back foot is sliding up a little bit to the right. She doesn't have a lot of shoulder turn. She's doing a lot of squatting. She's going down like this instead of turning and coiling. The low elbow. I see this one all the time. You probably do as well. That low elbow position is a big challenge. What I want you to realize, and I learned this from Dr. Greg Rose, who's one of my mentors, a low elbow is a lower body problem. So yes, they may have some upper body issues, but not being able to load properly and use the lower body properly sets you up for problems with having a low elbow, because you're going to find a way to get power. You're going to find a way to develop rhythm that way. And of course, we have the high elbow, the elbow being too high in the trophy position. We have that, what we call the S posture. So this is where you see that curve in the back right here. And we want to get the pelvis in a different position. So what's the solution? Broken record, progressions, get back to a platform stance. Focus on a platform stance. And I'm going to give you the drills that we've already been talking about and a new one here for the trophy position. Of course, the half serve drill. It's boring. It's not fun. People might think it looks funny, but this is the way to simplify. See if your students can do a half serve drill and get to a trophy position, and start to see if you can adjust the elbow position. Can you adjust the spine or the hip position? The 3/4 drill would be the next progression. And then we also have the trophy hold drill. So see if someone can they can start in the full motion, go to a trophy hold position, hold it for 10 seconds. You'll see how they look. You'll see where they have compensations. Their legs might start shaking. Their elbow may be low. Their elbow may be high. And then it can also help you understand if they're squatting and they have that S posture or not. It might be hard for players to just trophy hold without hitting the ball. That's the point, is that you want to teach players to understand these movements without the ball in play. Getting back to that kind of shadow stroke concept that a lot of coaches are big on. This is shadowing the proper positions. The solution that I call tucking the tail. So instead of this S posture, we want to get to a position where the pelvis is more aligned, and it's hard to show in Zoom, but imagine you tilt your hips forward so that your pelvis is in a neutral position instead of your butt sticking back. That can help you find this position, tucking the tail. All right. Also, the pinpoint stance, that's another solution that you can focus on as well. But again, I've said this before, I think players should focus more on the platform first, learn how to load, and then move the back leg later. All right, we're on to mistake number 5. And I realize there are more than 5 mistakes, but I wanted to pick the big ticket items. So mistake number 5, body limitations. And I can't stress this one enough. If you're still with me after 40 minutes and you're still actively engaged with what I'm going through here, the next 5 minutes is as important, if not more important, than the first 4 mistakes. As coaches, we are fixated on technique and trying to help people with their technique. And all the positions that I showed you earlier that we want players to model Federer and Sampras and get into that perfect trophy pose. Guess what? Most of them can't physically do it. And so this is the big difference here with how we can take teaching the serve and going to that next level and continue to evolve our education, our ability to help our students, is understanding that every one of these students has a limitation in their body, keeping them from getting into certain positions. This player right here, I know her injury history. She's had some issues with her back leg, with her ankle and with her foot. She's had back issues. She's also tight in the mid-back region, in the thoracic. This player right here has some spine issues, some spine challenges, some rotation issues. I don't know this player, but just by looking at the fact that he can't open up his chest at this position, my guess he's also restricted here in the mid-back, or what we call thoracic mobility, or the thoracic part of the spine. This player right here had Tommy John surgery on his elbow. Notice the low elbow here. He's not able to load his back leg. So you can start to put the puzzle pieces together that these players don't have a perfect trophy position because they haven't been taught the right progressions with drills on the court, and they also haven't been upgrading their body. Huge distinction to understand that it's a twofold process: technique and fixing the body or upgrading the body. This player right here, you'll notice he moves his back foot. He can't really turn. His elbow is low. He's got restrictions. This player as well, he's struggling with his spine and probably his hip mobility. If you're sitting in a chair all day, you're going to have a hard time turning and coiling and loading. All of these players right here are struggling with some type of hip mobility, spine mobility, ankle mobility. And so it's really important to be able to understand that, so that you don't try to get them to copy Federer. That's why I said earlier, copying Federer or Sampras is not really the way to go. It's just looking at the model and seeing if you can get them to start to inch closer towards what these great athletes are doing. Huge posture in today's culture. Problem with sitting, the cell phone, sitting at the computer. This is going to create a lot of issues with your players, with their movement on the court and with their serves and with their ability to perform at an optimal level. It's a major, major problem. And so what happens is you develop something, and I realize this may be getting in the weeds a little bit, but I just wanted to give you, again, a basic framework of how the body works. And this is the biggest, like, of the 5 mistakes, this is one of the biggest that we're not talking about. This idea of the lower cross syndrome. So you're going to have tight, short, weak muscles in the wrong places. And that's going to impact your ability to load your back leg. It's going to impact your ability to turn and to get into the racket drop, or even use a continental grip. You might not be able to use the circular swing path if your body can't get into these positions. And then, of course, we have the upper cross syndrome. Someone who's forward all day with their cell phone. Now you're going to have weak, short, tight muscles with the upper body. So we have to have a way to help our students with this. And Racket Fit, this is just a free plug for them. I work with these guys. I work with this organization. They're amazing. And they help give assessments. And you can learn an assessment that actually identifies where your students are limited and give them the appropriate corrective exercises to help them. And this has really opened up a new world for me. I was already helping people with their bodies before I learned this from Racket Fit, but I've taken it to a whole nother level. So if you're a coach who wants to keep evolving and growing, I highly recommend that you get involved with us, because it is so important to understand that this is how the body works. It works in alternating, stable, and mobile patterns. And again, you might be saying, Jeff, I just wanted to come here for serve technique. I don't want to learn about the body. But let me just give you, hold on a second. Let me just give you the simplicity around how the body works. So the body works in alternating stable and mobile patterns. That means that your foot is supposed to be stable and your ankle is supposed to be mobile. Your knee is supposed to be stable and your hip is supposed to be mobile. Now, what happens if you have an ankle injury or a foot injury and you lose your ankle mobility and your ankle now becomes stable, it becomes more fixed? Then the knee becomes more mobile, and that's how you get knee pain. What happens if your hip gets really tight? Instead of it being mobile and lubricated and can move, if it gets tight and stable, then your knee becomes mobile, and that's how you get your knee injury. So the skeleton or the body works in these alternating patterns, and if one joint gets thrown off, the domino effect takes place. And so, and not in a good way. That's where the pain comes in and the limitations in technique. So some of the things that I do with my students, I give them corrective exercises. These are some exercises that I've learned from Racket Fit, some that I've learned from other physical therapists over the years. And these are all designed to help players open up their body. The pictures on the left here, it's designed to help them load and coil. So for example, the belly lift. This is going to help open up the rib cage and help open up the spine. Amazing exercise. Seated trunk rotation. If you need to work on the ability to rotate your spine, remember, we're working on turning instead of down together, up together. Maybe players are going down together, up together because they physically aren't comfortable doing this. The body is going to follow the path of least resistance. So if it can't do something, it's not going to go there. It's going to protect you. It's designed to protect you. So when you see students struggling with technique, you have to look at this piece. Loading the back leg, one of the biggest issues I see. There are corrective exercises to help people load their back leg with the pelvis or the hips in the right position. And then I want to share this bionic shoulder routine with you. I learned this from Greg Rose. This is a 5-minute routine you can do 3 times a week. It will help with your shoulders, your wrists, your elbows, and you should give it to your students. And by the way, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I'm going to be giving you all a free gift at the end here, and it's going to include this. So technique corrections, body corrections. If you look at how you look at the serve, I want you to think about how you can improve your player's technique and improve how they use their body. And if you're intimidated by how to use their body, you can get more education. You can farm it out to a PT or a chiropractor in the area, preferably someone who's gone through the Racket Fit program. But this is important, moving towards serve mastery, technique corrections and body corrections. And so really, at the end of all of this, my goal today was to create a paradigm shift. I wanted you to look at the serve a different way. And so one of my favorite quotes from Wayne Dwyer is about, if you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things change. I think I said that right. I'm going pretty fast. I might have messed that up. But anyway, I changed the quote to, if you change the way you look at the serve you look at changes. So now, hopefully after today, you're going to look at the serve in a completely new light and have more questions and want more solutions. And obviously, if I can help, I'm here to help. This is my passion, is to help players all over the world. As I mentioned, I've got a little free gift. I'm going to give you all my Elbow the Enemy lesson absolutely free if you don't already have that. I'm also going to give away a toss lesson because there were a lot of questions before this presentation about the toss. So I'm going to include a toss lesson, and I'm going to give that bionic shoulder routine away. And that's just in exchange for your email address. If you want to stay in contact, 3 free lessons for you that I think if you use these 3 concepts with your students, it can really help them with their turn and their coil and their load, with their toss and with their shoulder. And so I just want to thank everyone. I had a blast giving this presentation today and did my best to get through it. Looks like we're doing well on time. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to put up this last slide here. I lost it. Where did it go? Got to get to the end. Anyway, that's the end of it. Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate all of you guys being a part of it.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a lot of information.
I know.
As Jeff said, just keeping your mind open to these kind of concepts. Jeff, I don't think the half serve is as frowned upon as you may think it is. I think there's plenty of coaches out there teaching half serve. Definitely not the mass popular, but I mean, a lot of the things you bring up make a lot of sense. If anybody wants to jump in and ask some questions, you guys are welcome to take yourself off of mute and jump in and ask a couple questions here. If not,
Jason, one thing I want to say about the half serve, I agree with you. I think a lot of coaches are teaching the half serve. I think the point I want to make is that I think there are details in the half serve that could be improved. And then also, I actually think players should be playing practice sets with the half serve, because what happens is they do the half serve and then they go out and they go play matches and they do their full serve. And now they're ingraining the old stuff again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeff, you've helped us out with my staff as well. And the information truly has been valuable. And we hope that everybody here was able to take that information. Again, if you have a question, you're welcome to ask it. If not, and you want to email Jeff, Jeff, what's a good email? Jeff@tennisevolution.com. Is that a good email?
Yep. Jeff@tennisevolution.com. If you have any follow-up questions, of course, if you have questions here, I can answer them. And then, of course, if you want this free content that I'm giving away, you can opt in there. And I see a question here. What would be the best serve to introduce and teach recreational club players that already have consistent? So, again, the club player, most of them, and Jason, you can give your input as well, but most of them are probably going to just want their serve. They're not going to want to spend a ton of time doing what I just showed, because what I showed is more of kind of that high performance track. But here's the question I keep asking. What if we came to our club players that are 3.0, 3.5 with a specific progression that said, listen, take the serve you have, go play your USTA leagues with it. But if you do this 2 or 3 times a week for the next year and you're diligent, I'm going to give you the progressions. In 1 year, if you stick with this, you will have a professional looking serve. Maybe it's 6 months, but if we had more progressions and more of a system for our students, I think we would get more buy-in.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we've already started to see that. And it's just kind of, like you said, getting people to think about this is where we're working towards. It might not be right now, but this is what we're working towards. There is a question here about foot faults. As an umpire, I see it even in varsity high school matches. Coaches don't ever address this issue.
Yeah, again, I don't know what to really say other than, even in some of the images, I probably was foot faulting, doing the drills. I think it's obviously important for coaches to make sure that kids are not foot faulting. And if we look at the technique, we need to make sure that that stance is more stable. So if we go back to our white belt and our yellow belt, like, don't let the kids move their front foot. And that's important. So that's what I have to say on that.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff, for your time and for sharing this knowledge. Thank you, everybody, for spending your time, your lunchtime with us. And if you have any other questions, again, you're welcome to email Jeff at jeff@tennisevolution.com. And we hope that you all enjoy the rest of the conference and have a great day. Thank you, guys.